waiting. There we are, live. Now we go live on the Instagram. I wish they would thread Instagram and StreamYard so I didn't have to go to two separate sites, but that's just the way it is. Okay. Here comes the intro. You're listening to the Grow Clinton podcast. Grow Clinton is a 501c6 nonprofit economic community development and tourism organization based in Clinton, Iowa. For more information, visit growclinton.com. Again, that's growclinton.com. Now, back to the show. What's happening, all you amazing people out there in podcast land? Thanks for listening to the #1 podcast, according to Joe Rogan. That is the Grow Clinton podcast. And no, that is satire. That's not accurate yet. It's not yet. My name is Andy Sokolovich. I am the host of the Grow Clinton podcast, also the president and CEO of the organization. As always, joined by Jenny Home from the Grow Clinton office. Jenny, what's happening?
You know what? We had a great ribbon cutting today.
We did.
Can you
Salvation Army 360
Life Center. 140 years.
Yeah. 140 years of doing business here in Clinton.
I know, helping so many people, and it was busy when we were in there also. I think there's great need there.
You know, they're co-located off of First Ave here on the south side of Clinton, and they are partnered with one of the same building as the Information Referral and Assistance Services. And there was a lot of people in there.
Yeah.
And it's great. I mean, it's all no cost associated with it. There's tons of clothes in there if you need it. Food bags that are available to take out of there with some goodies in it.
Yep.
They have shoes, toys,
everything,
furniture.
And it's just such a great service, centrally located. I'm really happy to see that people take advantage of it.
Yep. No questions asked. Come in and take advantage of it. It is awesome. You know what else is awesome, Jenny?
What?
Well, you know, I love me some high-speed fiber internet. That's right, folks. The Grow Clinton podcast is powered by Miles Communications, offering us high-speed internet. Without them, this podcast would not be possible. High-speed fiber internet, also offering television and telephone services. MilesTelephone.com. Again, MilesTelephone.com. If they're not in your area, they are on their way. We actually received a comment via our website asking when Miles was coming to their neck of the woods.
Nice.
So we connected with Scott Bodie, the manager out there at Miles Communications, and he followed up with them, and it looks like they're going to be moving out there. It was actually by the railport, not too far from where Mike's place is.
Nice. That's what we do.
Yep. Great guest today, Jenny.
I know. I feel like I have a lot to learn.
So you drive by it all the time.
Yes.
You see that one of the towers has the name Crossroads Logistics on it. You may not know what they do there, but that's all about to change, because we have in the Stu studio Mr. Mike Cross to talk about Crossroads Logistics and Crossroads Land Development. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I drive on 44th, just outside of Camanche, and I pass Crossroads Logistics. You have a brick building that's sitting out there. What goes on in that facility?
Nothing, actually. No. We are a bulk storage terminal, and we kind of serve in the industrial logistics space. So we're an old fertilizer factory. It used to be called Hawkeye Chemical. I think built in what was it, 63 or 64, I believe.
Not that long ago.
No, not that long ago. But
a lot of people in this community still refer to it as
Hawkeye.
the old Hawkeye.
Yes, they do. And that's why I usually use Hawkeye Chemical when people ask me what we do. It was PCS Nitrogen when it closed in, I think, 98 or 99. And my dad, Mark Cross, bought it at that time, actually, was just trying to buy a separate piece that was owned by PCS, and eventually was just, they kind of came to him and was like, would you be interested in buying the site? And he said yes. And here we are, 25 years later, trying to find new uses for an old fertilizer plant.
Another homegrown company.
Yeah. And what's cool is that was a very intelligent move on your dad's part, because now you offer rail storage for rail cars. You work closely with LyondellBasell, serving some of their overflow cars that come off of their sit yard. So how many feet of track are out there to support rail storage?
That's a tough trivia question. I could do the math on my phone quick because I know how many cars we can fit. Roughly.
Well, how many cars do you have out there?
Let's 450-ish is probably our capacity, but somewhere like 425 to 450.
That's a lot.
And these are cars. These cars are full, empty.
Either or, depends on the customer and the commodity. You know, a lot of the ones that we store are just kind of empty ones waiting to be staged to go get filled with plastic pellets. We have other customers that bring in vegetable oil that we store in our above ground storage tanks. So we have the old fertilizer tanks from the Hawkeye days. We have, as long as they're, you know, not hazardous cars, we can pretty much take anything hazardous, being like if it were any, you know, flammables or toxic commodities like that. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. We've had fertilizer over the years, liquid and solid fertilizers.
You have to be ready for anything. Almost.
Yeah, pretty much anything that can come in on rail. We've looked at a lot of different things over the years too. And yeah, I mean, there's just really, you know, there's always something. There's always somebody that needs to bring something in by rail and either, you know, get it on a truck or just, you know, keep it there. There's a lot of different ways to use it.
It makes sense. And I did not realize that rail car storage in a sit yard where you just simply drop the car off and that's it. Somebody monitors it and make sure that your product doesn't get taken away. And that's really you know, it's kind of like passive income, because then you generate revenue by charging that individual storage fees to have the car on your track. And I didn't realize that even existed until I got involved in the development of the Lincoln Way Industrial Rail and Air Park, which is a neighbor out there, Crossroads Logistics, and started working with rail users that were asking questions like, okay, well, where do I put these cars? Where do I store these cars? Because the UP doesn't work 7 days a week. So often they bring cars in, maybe it's a unit train or a smaller train, and they have to dump some off to be picked up on a Monday or a Tuesday. So it's really convenient, and it's awesome to have Crossroads Logistics in our own backyard.
Yeah. And the railroads position, at least, you know, as far as I know, you know, 10, 15 years ago was always, you know, our business is moving freight up and down the rails. We are not a place for cars to sit.
Yep,
and
that still applies.
They're pretty aggressive at fining you if you don't get your cars off of their tracks in a timely manner. So yeah, you know, there's a big need for it. And frankly, with just where, you know, Clinton and Camanche are in the world, we're a good spot for it.
I think it's just so fascinating. You know, I'm from Clinton. I say that all the time, but the trains are a big part of our lives here. And
Train City, USA.
It is.
Class ones.
Start saying it. Yeah.
I mean, you can't find, there's very few locations that I'm aware of that have access to the class 1 railroads that we do here in Clinton.
Well, and we don't know, someone who's just a regular citizen like me. We see the trains going through all the time. We don't know this kind of, I mean, at least I didn't know this kind of thing. It's just amazing that there's this business here, and we don't know that. So I'm so glad to be hearing about it.
Yeah. I think more people should know about it in the community, because frankly, like Andy said, you know, you got the nexus of the UP and the CP in the same spot. You have the Mississippi River here, and we're on the west side of the river. So there's less places on the west side of the river than there are on the east side of the river to just park cars after they make the crossing over the bridge, you know?
Yeah. And we partner very close with American River Transportation Company, which is a subsidiary of Archer Daniels Midland, part of their logistics unit. But they do serve customers outside of ADM. So they have a barge terminal there off of Washington and Camanche. So it's really cool. And whenever we go to respond to what's called a request for information, when a company is looking to locate here, they want to know our proximity to the river. They want to know where the nearest terminal is. And they want to know if we have access to a sit yard or a place to store rail cars. So our partnership with the Crossroads Logistics continues to blossom, and I'm very excited to have Mike come back into the fold with Grow Clinton.
Yeah, thank you.
So, what's funny when you took me on a little tour is that you have some people storing stuff in those tanks that it's been there for a long time, right?
Yes. Yep. They've been there for a long time. Yep.
Yeah. So that is another form of passive income where you're just simply storing the materials for them and they access it as needed. And you're able to leverage the ability to have those tanks on your property and charge a fee for that.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty common business. If you go to like big port cities, like go to Houston, for instance, you'll see huge tanks everywhere around the Houston Ship Channel and just kind of the Gulf in general, where stuff is just getting stored. And down there, all of it's either oil industry or petrochemical, so related to that type of stuff. Here we're agriculture based. This is Iowa, after all. We're in the middle of corn and soybean country, and so for us, vegetable oil, that's a big need around here. Ethanol would be another huge need around here. Biofuels, that sort of stuff. But plants that operate 24/7 still have to ship stuff out on either rail cars or trucks, and so they always need to move that stuff out. Well, the customer's not always ready to take that stuff, and so sometimes you need a place for it to sit, and a place like ours is what that is. And storage terminals are really important for supply chains.
I love this because I see this kind of stuff. I've been, to Texas. I've seen that kind of stuff. I've seen this in town here. I don't know what's going on there. I think this is amazing.
No, the average person doesn't.
No.
I mean, the only time they talk about the train traffic is either they're complaining because it's crossing an intersection,
right,
or closing an intersection,
right,
or it's blaring their horn. But I'd say the city of Clinton specifically has done a tremendous job over the course of the last 2 to 3 years, specifically at City Hall, working with the CP on our quiet zones, to ensure that the horn now, due to the signalization of the crossing, does not have to be blared at every intersection. And,
it doesn't, and it's good
also
to work together.
We've seen the reduction of closures or blockages up the riverfront as well. So they've been great to work with. And actually, a funny story, during one of our river was at a very high level when we closed the gate up on the north end, and it actually prevented the track from being exposed, so the trains couldn't come through. And the president of CP, Canadian Pacific, flew into Clinton Municipal Airport. But as a result of that conversation with the city administrator, we were able to come up, I wasn't involved, but they were able to come up with a solution to several problems, one being quiet zones. And it's amazing when you have the president of a massive railroad in your office, and he just looks and goes, "What do you want?" "We want quiet zones." And he just turns to some guy in a suit and goes, "Make that happen." and it's over.
And I think that the residents here in Clinton, we know the trains are here, but we don't realize, like you said, this is Nexus. This is, right where the business happens. And then you have someone like Crossroads Logistics in there, and it's all so amazing, all the moving parts that go with that. And I mean, it must be difficult to get this all orchestrated.
Yeah, it takes a good design on putting together the yard and the kind of the switching flow to make sure you can put things together, because remember, rail cars can only go forward or back. They can't turn. You can only turn them when there's a switch, and so you got to be smart about how that gets all put together to make sure that everything's going to flow efficiently, because if you don't, you're going to be shoving in, pushing back, shoving in, pushing back, doing that a lot.
And that's your job.
Yes.
And so
really, the design firms that make the engineering firms that design sit yards are really good at that type of stuff, but you also know your operation better than they're ever going to. So it's more of a collaborative thing.
You have to answer for it, though.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. If it doesn't work and your employees are having to spend a lot more time working on things that shouldn't take as long as they do, then
How many employees do you have out there?
We're around 10.
Okay.
Yeah, it is very interesting. And, we recruited Atlas Roofing Corporation to the area. They required rail service. So we were able to tap into some state funding to support the creation of and the installation of some additional rail. But, as we were looking at the park in general, we partnered with a company called VIA Rail, VIA Rail. It's a rail engineering company. And it was a complicated process to identify where rail is going to go, the grade of we had to remove a ton of dirt. Put it this way, where the rail crossing is coming off the industrial lead right behind rail 1, if you're familiar with that, down at the rail park, it was 12 feet difference. We had to remove 12 feet of soil to make sure that that rail came to grade and there wasn't too aggressive of an incline. So
Wow.
it is always surprisingly complicated when you get into.
And then we hit a
adding new-
tarry-like substance 12 feet down, stinky tarry-like substance, and it's halted construction for about, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks until we get out of the Department of Natural Resources, come and identify it. And it turns out that it was just some kind of organic matter. So it must be like a burial pit for carcasses or something like that at one point. And just over the years, underneath 12 feet of heavy soil, it just decomposed and pooled up and created this like gel substance. And
it's essentially how
that's what it is.
It's essentially fossil fuels, right?
Right there. So
how much of that type of thing do you have to deal with?
Well, whenever we have to, build new track, I mean, it's not just like Andy said, you got to move a lot of dirt first. Well, before you move dirt, you got to find out, are we going to run into anything underground? And okay, now we're ready to move dirt. What grade does it have to be? And then, what are we going to put on top of it? What ties are we going to use? What gauge rail are we going to use? All that sort of stuff.
In my head, I'm like, you just put it down, right?
Right. Yeah. It's just a railroad. And that's what they did, back in the 1850s or whenever they built the railroads originally, but probably a lot longer than that. But the railroads nowadays are pretty stringent over what their operating standards are. So if you're asking UP or CP to bring cars into your yard, they're going to have to sign off on whatever the design is, because they want to make sure that they're not going to derail any of their equipment operating on your track. So that's really important too, is working hand in hand with your friends at the railroad.
And once again, you're the one that has to answer for. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so much pressure.
There's a young man down in the Quad Cities in Davenport, in the Eastern Iowa industrial site that the Quad Cities Chamber oversees the development of, and his name is Steve. And Steve's probably in his, I don't know, mid to late 30s. This guy has forgotten more about rail than I ever hoped to know. He's been in the construction side. He's been the short line management side. We hop in his truck, which has the capacity to hop on the rail, and we drive around, and he taught me how to read the gauge of the rail. You can tell by the stamp when it was actually manufactured. And then he goes on to saying, for something like a sit yard or a storage yard like Mike has, you don't have to use a really heavy gauge rail. You can get by with something a little bit smaller, because you're just storing cars and moving them at a very low speed. But it was cool driving. He's like, now look at that. Do you see that? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. As we approach the switch, he's like, that's too aggressive of a turn. And they've been having some cars hop the track.
Right.
And then they have to go out, and the process of getting a rail car that's attached to other rail cars back on the track is like a whole day's worth of work.
It's a nightmare if you have a derailment, which fortunately, we've only had a few over the years, but nothing at a high, nothing that's been more than, hey, go grab some, heavy equipment and lift it back on the tracks. But at high speed, remember, it's a physics problem. Like, think of how heavy a train is, and now you need it to turn. Well, the train doesn't want to turn, so it's gonna fight the rail as it's trying to turn, and so you got to make sure that that's the right.
It's a very complicated process.
So, what's your background, and how did you come to this? I mean, I know it's your family business, but how in your life, how did you come around to this?
So I went to school at Iowa. Well, like you said, I'm a homegrown Camanche native here. Went to the University of Iowa, studied chemical engineering out there, and have spent most of my career in the chemical industry. So a lot of factories ship stuff out by rail because it's just a lot more efficient. A rail car, think of it as 4 semi trucks, so it can fit 4 times the amount of product that a semi truck can. So it's more efficient to send things out on rail or bring in your raw materials on rail. So you get a lot of exposure to it that way. Also, just the family business in general, like you said. I mean, we've been doing this now for call it 25 years. I was out, I was like the first crew who was out there pumping oil cars and into those tanks back, probably 15, 16 years old in the summers, and worked doing that for a long time. Would come home from college and work in the summer at the site. And so, I've been around it. Handling the cars, driving the, we have track mobiles. That's a brand of like car mover. But the equipment to move them around, operating the switches, that sort of stuff. I've done that. So I guess I've just kind of grown up around it over the years.
Yeah. Very cool. Again, we're talking to Mike Cross from Crossroads Logistics and Land Development. There's multiple LLCs that are out there, but Crossroads Land Development does own property out along 44th.
Yep.
And recently you and I have met, and we're looking at marketing a couple of those parcels for some future development. And then there's the land that you have that's north of the track is a perfect location for another industrial lead to come off the east-west main line to serve the end user, ultimately a manufacturing plant.
Yeah. That'd be a great location, I think, at least, without doing a study first, to make sure. I think it'd be a great location for another sit yard. And
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Mike just referred to studies. Again, before getting involved in this, I did not realize how much due diligence goes into preparing a chunk of farmland for development. I mean, I say this all the time jokingly, but in that rail park, which at its prime before we started getting development in there was just a little over 500 acres, advertised right around 600. But I could tell you where the squirrels buried the nuts and the land that's available out there. I mean, we do everything from endangered species studies, geotechnical studies. We do soil borings to determine the composite of the soil, the type of the soil, how far down do we have to go before we hit sandy soil? Is there a rock bed? How deep is until you got to hit the Jordan Aquifer so you can tap into wells? I mean, it's just crazy
so much
stuff you have to do, and it's not cheap to do all those studies either. So we are a certified site, meaning that the Lincoln Way Industrial Rail and Air Park is certified by a third party known as Quest Site Solutions, a partnership with the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Previously, when we were certified, we had to do it every 5 years, a recertification. Now we have to do it every 3 years, which means I get done with one certification, and within 18 months, I'm cranking up
turn
the next
around.
one. Now we don't have to do all the studies. Like, we're not worried about some crazy endangered bird going out there and putting up a nest, but there's a lot of studies we do have to conduct over and over and over again to make sure there's been no changes to the land. And it's time consuming and it's costly, but it's well worth the investment. I don't know how people that are land developers trying to market property specifically for industrial use sell property without having to do those studies, because it's every request for information we get, they need those studies as a part of their site selection process. So it's well worth our investment to get them done.
So when you go out there and you see the Crossroads, I'm losing it. What is it?
Sign.
Yeah.
Oh, my kids are going to have to take care of me someday. The sign, but it's more than just setting up a business there. I mean, when you see something like that, it's
impressive.
It's very appropriate to say,
you.
that's amazing. Amazing work.
Yeah.
And you were talking to me before we went on about how you pump the oil out of tanks. That's what I was after.
Moving it around is a whole nother matter altogether.
Explain that. People don't know that's going on out there.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to move liquid commodities, you need pumps and pipes to do it.
Yeah.
So that's what we've set up out there, and not everything goes to plan all the time. We were just talking before we started recording. One of our tanks, we're having trouble getting the oil out of it, so we've had to get really creative in coming up with a solution to get that tank empty, because it needs to get cleaned so it can be inspected, because you're talking about rail, the standards you have to do with that. Well, above ground storage tanks have a lot of standards too, and there's a number of inspections that have to get completed on a certain timeline for name your government agency, and there you go. So that's a whole other can of worms itself.
But you said it's like 100 feet.
Yeah, that tank. Well, that tank. Yeah, that's a
Mhm.
really big tank. I mean, it's 100 feet tall and like 170 feet in diameter. It's just enormous. You don't see tanks that size very often, but fertilizer plants, which we were a fertilizer plant, are a place that kind of happens more just because they're trying to, make as much as possible, get that economies of scale going. So.
You just don't know what's going on around here.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
One of the things I love about recording this podcast is having the opportunity to interview professionals like Mike to reveal what goes on within our community and the injection of wealth, the economic growth that we've experienced. A lot of people just want to put it on par with if we have a Chick-fil-A, we're successful. If we don't, we're not, type of thing.
Yeah.
But I can just say between the investment that Crossroads Logistics has made, the investment Atlas Roofing has made, ADM on a new corn wet mill, Nestle Purina Pet Care, and the expansion of a production line, plus the ASRS, their automatic storage retrieval system, which is state-of-the-art robotics. I mean, you're talking over $1 billion
with a B
dollars of economic impact just from our existing industries that continue to expand. So yeah, it's cool to be in the inner circle and work on these projects and have the understanding of how impactful these projects are to the community. But I wish we could. One thing we need to do a better job of is relaying that message. And this podcast definitely helps us do so.
I think you're doing a great job.
And we're really grateful for the investment in our community. And, that's what keeps our community going. And Clinton has always been an industrial town, but people believe in it and come and, invest in it. And we're just so grateful.
Yeah. We, my wife and I moved around for a few years and moved back in 22. So we were gone from, the Clinton area for about 10 years. And I think when I moved back, I did notice like it felt like things are changing. Like it felt like people are starting to notice like, hey, this area has some real potential. Yeah. And like we've talked about so far, I mean, it's Clinton is in a perfect spot for, we got rail, we got a river, we got an airport, and we're not that far from major interstate. So,
right.
Why not this area?
Exactly.
That's the story I tell with every time we're reaching out to a prospective company. Today, I got a call. Jenny's going to love this, but Dennis Quaid, the actor Dennis Quaid, has been doing this thing with a group of production folks making these video series that air on public broadcasting as well as the Discovery Channel, highlighting communities that are doing cool things, whether it be from a small business development side of things, creating an entrepreneurial sector, and really a pipeline to create new businesses, supporting legacy businesses, multi-generations that work at a single company that's family owned. And they identify Clinton as a potential candidate to be featured in their ongoing series. So we're working on that as well.
That is so cool.
But, I mean, here's somebody who never been to Clinton, has no idea, somehow heard of our community on the eastern side of the state along the mighty Mississippi River and reached out by finding our contact information on the website at growclinton.com.
That is amazing.
And hopefully, at first I listened to it and I was like, nah, this isn't real. And then I went to their website and I was like, oh, well, that's Dennis Quaid and there's episodes and there's the interviews.
That is so cool.
It's a legit thing.
And that's a company like Crossroads, that they're interested in. They're interested in that.
Yeah, they loved it. They loved hearing about our success and what's happening. That's awesome. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you, Mike, for being on the show.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Jenny, what do you got big plans this weekend?
I do. We're going to be traveling. We're going to Tennessee because we have a kid who moves and now he wants to have help hanging stuff. So nice, but they've got a beautiful family and they're brand new to the community in Tennessee. So got to go see them. Yep.
You know what I'm doing this weekend?
What?
Yard work.
Oh, man.
Every weekend we've had either baseball or something going on. I love my yard. I try to keep it pristine.
You do. Your yard looks great.
I love planting, the flowers and planting veggies, a big garden, but it's like crazy how little time I've had to do that. Now I pulled up to my house right before the ribbon cutting to grab a bite to eat. And I looked at my yard and I was like, what is happening?
See?
So I got
it's another thing that's always a lot more complicated than you think it's going to be.
Well, then over the winter months, for some reason, a large chunk of my lawn just decided not to come back. So I got to till it up and lay down some sod. And so I'll be breaking my back this weekend doing some yard work.
And if you're somebody who really, is it a big deal to you, Mike, to have your yard just right? If that's how it is.
Not at this time right now, but my kids are really young. So they eat up most of my time. I don't really care as much about my yard.
That's how it should be, though.
Yeah.
But if you are somebody like that, then it just really does bother you.
It bothers me.
Yeah.
But you know what? I got high speed fiber internet.
You don't have to worry about that.
I want to thank Miles Communications for powering the Grow Clinton podcast. Check them out, milestelephone.com. Again, I've been your host, Andy Sokolovich, president of Grow Clinton, joined by Jenny Home for this episode and Mike Cross from Crossroads Logistics. If you need any information from us, growclinton.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. We want to thank all of our investors and supporters, because without you, we would not exist. We are a nonprofit organization that is fully dependent on our investors to ensure that we can continue to do the work that we do with a relatively small staff of 7. But I am proud of each and every one of them because we've been crushing it. Mm-hmm. All right, everybody, have a great holiday weekend. Enjoy your Memorial Day. And until I speak to you again, stay classy. See ya. Thank you for listening to the Grow Clinton podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on all your socials. Until next time, see ya. Stop this and the stream here.